Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says that Russian forces have, quote, completely destroyed the industrial Donbas region. According to the regional governor, Russian shelling killed at least 12 people and wounded dozens in the eastern city of Severodonetsk. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry said intense fighting there is preventing civilians from fleeing the area. In his nightly video address, Zelenskyy described the situation there as hell.
The Ukrainian armed forces continue to make progress in liberating the Kharkiv region, but the occupiers are trying to further strengthen the pressure in the Donbas. It's hell there, and that's not an exaggeration. The bombardment of Severodonetsk is brutal and absolutely senseless.
Earlier, I asked DW's Fanny Facha in Kyiv for more on the Russian assault in the Donbas region.
That is extremely difficult for civilians right now, in fact, almost impossible, actually, to live in a way that's safe for them. You have to understand that Russian forces are basically fighting over every village, over every road, over every bridge. And same way, obviously, Ukrainians as well, as they want to make sure and prevent that Russian forces do not advance further into the Donbas region. But while this is ongoing, especially we have to zoom in on this one town, Severodonetsk, which is the administrative capital of the Luhansk region, which is one of the two regions of the Donbas region. And ever since 2014, the Russian-backed separatists took control over the capital of Luhansk, which is Luhansk city. Ever since that, basically Severodonetsk is the Ukrainian territory. In that regard, that Ukraine wants to make sure that this is not falling also into the hands of separatists or Russian forces right now. So as a result, this is where shelling is really increasing. And this is, unfortunately, you have the casualties. Over the past 24 hours alone, about 13 people are reportedly killed in Luhansk region, and about 12 of them, according to the Luhansk governor, in Severodonetsk. So really the focus here is on the city, and unfortunately this is where increased fighting and increased shelling is going to make the life of people who are hunkering down there in their basements, wherever they can find shelter. It is making their life, as Zelenskyy said, pointed out there, as hell. And the question is just how long this is going to go on, because in fact just yesterday President Zelenskyy signed the decision that the martial law is going to be extended by 3 more months in Ukraine. So very likely, unfortunately, what he describes as, quote, hell, is going to last for quite some time, unfortunately.
Now, it seems the recent success of Ukraine's troops has bolstered Kyiv's confidence. We're going to take a quick look at this tweet by an advisor to President Zelenskyy, Mikhailo Podolyak. He's been involved in peace talks with Russia. He writes, "Do not offer us a ceasefire." And then he adds, "Kyiv is not interested in a new Minsk agreement. The ceasefire agreed in 2014-2015 aimed at ending the fighting in the Donbas, suggesting Moscow would simply launch another war in a few years." And then he goes on, "Until Russia is ready to fully liberate occupied territories, Ukraine's negotiating team is weapons, sanctions and money." Fanny, from what you're hearing, have the Ukrainians now basically given up on peace talks? And do they believe that they can keep going head-to-head with the Russians if this war continues to drag on, as you're suggesting?
Ukraine certainly did not give up on peace talks, but what they made clear, and they made clear over and over ever since this war has begun, or this new offensive, to say so, because people are actually still saying the war actually began 2014 for the first time when the separatists attacked the Donbas region, and not in February this year. However, they say they definitely want to have peace, but they don't want that peace to be dictated by Russia. So they do not want Russia to basically dictate the conditions under which this peace is going to be reached, or let's just at first talk about a possible ceasefire at some point, because this is what people are looking at. Let's just have a ceasefire under which we can talk about what's the way forward. But given the full picture that now Ukraine is receiving billions of dollars from the US, but also from the G7 countries, this is the time when Ukraine says they want to win this war, because they don't want this war to be frozen and Russia to attack again in a few years from now.
DW correspondent Fanny Facha reporting from Kyiv. Thank you. Now, while fighting rages in Donbas, the city of Kyiv is firmly in Ukrainian hands after Russian troops were driven away. Authorities are now eager to restore public life, and that includes getting the Kyiv subway running again. But there are some obstacles to that, as our correspondent Matthias Berlinger has been finding out.
They came here to flee the bombs and now they don't want to leave. People who have been living in the subway station are petitioning the government to let them stay. Subway stations here in Kharkiv have been serving as bomb shelters since the beginning of the war. Ekaterina Talpa and her husband have been living here since the very first day.
I go home every 3 weeks, but I always need to prepare myself mentally before I can go. Then I run home and take a bath. We can wash here, but the conditions are not ideal.
Others don't have a choice. They do not have a place to go back to anymore. This station is the terminal station of the metro line, the northernmost station in the city. It's closest to the front line and to those areas that have been most heavily shelled. The shelling of Kharkiv has all but subsided, and the local government wants to get the subway system running again. It wants the people to leave the metro and is offering to relocate them. But many here don't trust the peace.
I do go out on the street sometimes, but the fear is always there. It is not that easy. We need time to overcome it.
Around the subway station, many of the houses have been destroyed. In some streets, barely a house has been untouched. Olga has also spent the past months in a subway. It's the first time she's come back to see the apartment where she lived with her mother and her son. She was told that there was damage, but she didn't know how bad it was. It's terrible. The shell hit a wall in one of the rooms. There's debris everywhere. She documents everything. People can report the damage on the government website, but nobody knows how long it will take to get any support.
My knees are shaking. My knees are actually shaking. I still can't believe it. I knew that the windows were broken.
If only that shell hadn't hit.
Yeah, if there wasn't this hole in the wall, we might still somehow move back. The house is still standing, but this is different.
For now, the only thing to do is to collect some of their belongings. They will not move back to the subway, but to a relative's house.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the other developments in the war in Ukraine. The US Senate has overwhelmingly approved nearly $40 billion in new aid for Ukraine. The emergency package includes military, economic and humanitarian assistance. The decision came as the US authorized the shipment to Ukraine of another $100 million worth of weapons and equipment from Pentagon stocks. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says Ukraine's allies will not accept a peace dictated by Russian President Vladimir Putin. Addressing German lawmakers ahead of a European meeting on Ukraine later this month, Chancellor Scholz pledged to supply more weapons to Ukraine and to work quickly to make Europe independent of Russian energy. Russian missiles have hit a grain warehouse in eastern Ukraine. Officials say the storage facility south of Zaporizhzhia is now completely unusable. Russia has repeatedly targeted Ukraine's grain warehouses and other civilian infrastructure.